Benny from Nomad Effect here. So we just finished installing our rear suspension. If you want to see a little bit more about that, check out the video here. I'm super excited to get our back wheels on, so I'm going to jump straight into the rear brakes. The rear brakes on the FJ62 are drum brakes. We've had the drums off for a while and I've been able to clean up the brakes a little bit. And I've also replaced the brake cylinder on both of the back drum brakes. So I'm just going to show you what I need to get these back brakes done. I don't know whether they're good or not, but we bought ourselves some Bosch drum brake pads. They weren't the cheapest option, but they got pretty good reviews. We also got ourselves some Cardone drum brakes for the car. And I've sprayed these up with some caliper paint. So hopefully they'll be able to withstand the heat and they'll stop the outside of these drums from rusting too much. We also grabbed ourselves from Centric Parts a drum brake hardware rebuild kit. A lot of the springs and stuff like that were pretty unusable when I pulled them off the old brakes. So hopefully this gives it another 30 years worth of usage on these. And these are all the old parts that I pulled off the brakes, and I've left the brake assembly put together from the other side so that I can work out how to put this side together. Here we go. So I have to grease up all the parts on here where the pads are going to make contact with the pieces of the car. So you can see where they're raised all through here. We're going to make sure there's plenty of grease on this. And again, just be really careful when you're putting the pads in because you don't want to get the grease on the pads. These pads are pre-treated with a substance that helps them bed into the outside of the drum brake. And if I put grease on it, it messes with the substance that helps with the bedding process, and you'll have to get new brakes sooner rather than later. These parts are old parts that were already on the brakes and I took them off. I couldn't find these new, so I'm going to clean these ones up and hopefully everything should be okay. Sophia and I looked all over the internet for a good tutorial on how to put these rear drum brakes together. We didn't find anything that actually applied to our car. I'm going to do my best to clearly explain how I put this rear driver's side for a 1988 FJ62 drum brake together. What I found the easiest was to lay the brake shoes down the same way that they would be on the car. That made it easier to place the other parts onto the brake shoes as needed. I don't know what all the specific parts are called, I'm just going to refer to them as you see them on screen. This part only goes around one way, and on the passenger side I actually had to drill out the little hole a little bit for it to fit onto these new brake shoes. The driver's side didn't have the same problem. I'm guessing that a previous owner of this car had to replace some of the brake parts before. I did my best to grease every piece of metal that was touching another piece of metal in the assembly of these brakes. Once you get this part placed over the little pin correctly, you then need to find the little horseshoe clip that secures this part down. There are special tools for securing these little clips, but I always use needle nose pliers. I somehow always manage to get my fingers stuck in these pliers, so take it easy. When securing this large spring, you need to make sure you're paying attention to which shoe it goes over and which shoe it goes under. The spring goes over the shoe on the right and under the shoe on the left. Before reinstalling this handbrake tensioner, I took it all apart and hit everything with the wire wheel and then added grease to it. This made everything so much easier when I was putting it back together and trying to retighten the shoes. This next part then gets placed over the top of where you applied the horseshoe clip. There's then a locator on the handbrake adjuster that you need to line up, and it should actually rest against the handbrake adjuster. The circlips that we had supplied in the Centric drum brake rebuild kit actually didn't fit over this pin. We were just lucky that we had some stainless steel circlips that we could use. Again, I just use needle nose pliers to secure the circlips onto the pin. Once that's in place, flip the whole assembly over and attach the little tiny spring on the left hand side. These shots are back on the passenger side of the car just because it makes it so much easier for us to film. Getting this spring in was a serious pain in the butt. You can probably tell by my forehead vein just how much I'm pushing, and I tried everything. Using a combination of these two pliers, I somehow managed to hook it on and then really forcefully push it through. I've seen other videos where people have the spring on the other side of this little tab and then they poke it over once the spring is installed. There was no way I was getting the spring over the top of that little tab. It was just under way too much tension. I don't have any real advice for this one. Just put everything you got into it, and it seemed to work when I put myself at this angle to get myself the most amount of leverage. Okay, I'm gonna have a crack at explaining what's going on right now. We bought a drum brake rebuild kit from Cruiser Corp, and it comes with a whole heap of things, springs and all that sort of stuff. And so far, other than the springs being super tight, it seems like a pretty good kit. But this retaining pin is either too short or this spring is too big, and I can't compress this down enough to get this clip on. So I'm gonna try, as a solution, to cut a few links out of this spring, and hopefully it'll compress down far enough for me to be able to get this clip on. This is hard to turn because this is moving with it.
Do you want me to hold it? Boom!
Right? Right?
It worked! Maybe go the other way?
And then I've got this thing here that I can push backwards and then like tuck that in there like so. Good, and then that'll move with that. And then this can go back. Hold on to that. Right, and so that, I feel like it's right. I feel like that's okay. I think anyway. So these when they came had a little bit of protective grease on them. So I'm just using a bit of sand, emery paper, whatever you want to call it, to take a bit of that off, like not much, just to make sure that there's no grease or anything on it before I put it in place. Cool. And there, so it should go just there, like so, right? Right, and then, does that work? Sort of, yeah. But not.
Why didn't that work?
No, I think it's right. I think it's right. Like, I'm not sure what these two holes are for at all. And now if I adjust the handbrake, it should open the pads out onto the thing. You bling?
Yeah. We're doing it.
They're definitely a lot easier to screw on.
Wow. Beautiful. Careful.
She's jacked.
She is jacked.
Wow. Right?
Are you happy?
Are you?
I
Looks
think
so good.
I think so.
Looks so beefy. Right?
We did it.
Wow. I can't believe that after however long it's been, we now have a fucking wheel back on this car. Like,
Well,
the car's actually sitting under its...
hopefully it works.
Yeah. The car's actually sitting under its own weight, which is just crazy.
Woohoo!